Hey guys, it's good to see you from wherever you are on the planet. Thanks for dropping in, I really appreciate it. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a brake fluid change on a Suzuki GSXR. Now this motorcycle has two separate brake systems, one in the front and one in the rear. I'm going to show you how I change the brake fluid in the front, how I bleed the system and replace it with new brake fluid. And then I'll move to the rear system. I'm also going to show you a little tool that I use. It's a one-way bleeder valve. It just helps one person do it themselves, opposed to having help or making the process a little bit more cumbersome. So enjoy the video. Here it comes. This is the brake fluid and the bleeder valve assistance tool that I'm going to be using. So the type of brake fluid I'm going to be using for this change is some Motul factory line .4 racing brake fluid. It's important, if nothing else, that it's .4, so it has to be .4. I decided to stick with this product because I've used this brand on other lubricants on the motorcycle and it's reliable. It works great and it's not super expensive. Additionally, I'm going to use this motorcycle brake bleeder valve. So I'll open it up and you'll see what it is. So inside the package is a couple things. I have a one-way bleeder valve system. And these are the parts. You have a long tube and you have a one-way valve which goes that way. So this side here would hook up to your calipers and this side here would drain into whatever container you're going to use. So this part here attaches on here, and then you would attach that to your brake caliper, and the fluid would come through the one-way valve and then drain into your container. All right, here's the motorcycle that I will be changing the brake fluid on. It is Brembo front brakes. You can tell by looking at the brake fluid reservoir that it needs to be changed. It's quite dark and dirty. It should be a brighter yellow clear color. And there's the other brake caliper, and the bleeding screw is behind it right here. And the back brake is right here. The bleeding screw nipple is right there as well. There is the rear reservoir. You can access or undo the reservoir, which is in here. Just unbolt it and take it out. The first thing that I'm going to do is open the brake reservoir for the front. You can see the color of the brake fluid. It's kind of a browny orangey color, and that's a really good indicator that it's time to change it. Because I don't want any of the brake fluid to damage the finish on the motorcycle, I'm just going to surround that area with a couple towels. There, you can see that'll protect the rest of the motorcycle. It's good to have a look at the cap. Have an inspection of that. The cap tells you what type of fluid you need on it. .4. In my case, I've got a little bit of condensation in it, so I'm going to dry that out. Same with this. It's in good shape, but it's got some condensation on the inside, which I'll wipe off before I put it back together. There, that looks good. Dry this off. So now I'm going to open the bleeder valve and bleed the front right brake caliper. I'll be using the front right brake as I bleed it. Close-up picture. Right there is the bleeder valve. So that's a better view of the bleeder valve right there. It's got a rubber top on it, and that just pulls off like so. And then you have access to that valve there. That is an 8mm size. Next I'm going to hook up my valve. So it's hooked up. I've set up the collection container to come from the valve through the wheel and then down into the bottle. So I'm going to start to bleed it right now. I'm going to be bleeding most of this old brake fluid through the right caliper and get most of this old stuff out, and then when I do the left caliper it'll be a lot quicker and we'll have more of the new oil in it. So I'm going to be bleeding for quite a while to get this stuff through the brake line. It's important to make sure that you never let that empty so that you don't get air in your brake lines. To get this started, you've got to loosen this nut. That just opens the bleeder valve. Okay, so it's a little loose. The importance of having the valve mechanism in is that you don't have to open, bleed, close, open, bleed, close cycle. You should be able to just keep on squeezing the brake fluid through there. So I'm going to press the brake and see what happens here. So you can see the fluid start to come out as I press the brake. And because it's a one-way valve, it doesn't flow back into the caliper. Up top, this is what I'm doing. I'm squeezing this gently. And I'm monitoring the level of the brake fluid as well. You can see it go down slightly every time that I press it. You can see the brake fluid go into the collection bottle. It moves downwards every time I press the brake lever. I'm getting close on here where I want to start adding some new brake fluid because it's getting quite low towards the opening. So the last thing you want is that opening filled with air into the brake system. So I'm going to top it up. And then I'm going to continue to bleed it. Time to add some more. And time to add some more. This one's a bit lengthy because I'm refilling and emptying the reservoir repeatedly. You could use a syringe to empty it the first time as well. That's another method. It's almost clear. Just to demonstrate, another way that you can do it is to use a syringe. You can put that in and pull it out this way. You can see the fluid is pretty clear now. pretty orangey looking, dark yellow, and the new fluid is nice and clear. So I'm going to call that one for the right brake, and now I'm going to move on to the left side brake. To wrap this up, on one side, close off the valve. And disconnect the hose. There, that hose is disconnected. Wipe off the end, the nipple, and then put on the cap. And that one's done. Same procedure as before. Pop this off, put it somewhere safe. Hook the hose up. That hose is hooked up. Now to loosen the bleeder. I can get in there. The bleeder valve is open. Now we're going to bleed it. So with this side, I'm going to be looking for some dirty fluid to come through and then turn to clear. And that will tell me that line is cleared. Now that the left caliper is done, I'm going to close the bleeder valve. Take the hose off. Bleeder valve is closed, and I'll take the hose off. Wipe off any excess that may have spilt, and then put the cap back on. Little rubber cap, make sure that goes back on. Perfect. So those two are done. Before I wrap that up, I'll just top off the reservoir, and that'll be it for the front brakes. So now I'm done bleeding the left caliper. I'm going to top this reservoir off. It should be good. Put the other components back in it. This part here, just nice and clean and dry. And the cap. The cap had a bit of condensation in it, so that's wiped off now too. And that just goes back on like this. It's also a really important idea before you ride it to squeeze that to get brake pressure back in there, which it is. That looks 100 times better. Last part is to put the retaining clip in. There's the front brakes done. Moving on to the back brake. So the best way to do this is to take the back reservoir out of the way, to use an 8mm socket, and there's where this one's located on this motorcycle. There's the bolt for it, and this just slides out. Down and out here. So that's all I do. That way I have access to it. And you can see on this one as well, it's a dark color. So it's a very short brake line, so it shouldn't take much to do that. So the brake line comes down from here to here, and then along here, around, there's the bleeder valve right there. So let's do this one. Once again, on the lid it tells you .4 only. No condensation in there. Looks like there's a little bit of condensation on the top. Pop that out, and you can see it's kind of got that yellowy brown look. very small reservoir in there. And I'm going to use the syringe technique. The front brake system is a completely separate system from the back brake system. So take this guy off, put that somewhere safe, stick this on here like that, loosen the valve, use the back brake. So I'm going to take as much out with the syringe as I can. So I've extracted that much. The reservoir is not quite empty, and now I'll fill it up with new brake fluid and pump that through the system. Now I'll pump on the back brake to get that brake fluid through the system. And while I'm doing that, you can see down below that there's fluid coming through the hoses, and it's a bit yellowish. So I'm going to wait until that yellow fluid is filled with clear fluid, and then I'll know that I'm done. The fluid coming through is nice and clean now, so I'm going to close off that valve and then put the top on the reservoir. So the bleeder valve is closed. Take the hose off. Put the dust cap back on. Top this off with clean fluid. Wipe down the parts that go in. Just wiping down that cap. Also going to wipe down this little guy here. It's got a bit of condensation in the middle, so I'm just going to wipe that off. Put it back together. That is placed on the top there. This guy is placed on top of that. And the lid goes back on top. Next, it's time to put the brake reservoir for the rear brake back in position. So just slides in. Like so. Tighten it up, not too tight. And that is it. So that rear brake fluid reservoir is now in position. Hey guys, I just finished bleeding the brakes on my Gixxer front and back, and you'd be surprised how much brake fluid you need to do that. So you need almost a whole packet of it. So anyway, it all went really well, no major issues. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you like stuff like this, please hit the like button and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you all in the next one. So check out the amount of fluid that was used. I started off with that amount there, 500 milliliters, which is almost as much as what came out. This is not completely empty, but it's pretty surprising how much you had to clear out of the lines. This is the brake fluid. It's kind of a weird amber color. It's supposed to be almost like a very clear light yellow color. So you can barely even see it in the reservoirs now. So that's all brand new fluid. And we'll catch you all in the next one. Bye guys.